Cat, it's Maximus here, this time with a review of a CRKT HomeFront by Ken Onion. I don't do pocket knife reviews very often, but I did find this one used at a pretty good price and want to do a review of it. It's actually, surprisingly enough, still sold. There's actually a couple of YouTube videos, one of, surprisingly enough, of the Mr. Ken Onion demonstrating an aluminum version of this knife. On the manufacturer's website, the aluminum version is $150. This is $100. On Amazon, looks like it's right around $55 for the nylon handle one, and that's generally what I'd recommend if you were set on getting this. So the big selling point of this one is the fact that it can be taken apart quickly and easily. They call it a field serviceable pocket knife for people who are in the types of situations or whatever dirt or whatever that you get into the mechanism of the knife that you can quickly just take it apart and really clean out all the bits without needing any additional tools. It is a 3.5-inch blade. There's a cornucopia of knife steels, and I don't really know about them, but they say this is like 1.4. You can look on the website, 1.4 something or another. Some really weird steel number. It is a lever or a flip open, and it works pretty well with the long blade. The blade is reasonably thick. If we actually take a look here, we'll do a quick measurement on that right here at the base. 134 thousandths, so that's reasonably thick. I should get a metric measurement off of that too. 3.4 millimeters. And it seems pretty nice. It is pretty robust. It does have a nice shape with a pretty large belly. Now, one of the issues, and I'll show when I take this apart, is on the aluminum frame one, this back right here is aluminum, and the knife blade ends up hitting that. And that's something that many other knives, such as this Kershaw or other models of CRKTs, it's something to do with this easy takedown version, that there isn't a stop. So the only thing that stops the blade when you're closing it is the fact that it physically hits the little arc on the back of this piece. And so on the metal version, that's damaging the edge. Another thing I noticed is there is no thumb stud. So if you kind of get it, not all the way open, you gotta kind of either put your thumb right at the top of the blade or grab the blade or kind of shake it around to get it open. And that's something I thought some people might find annoying, is I thought they should have just done something, added a little thing there so you could have had a thumb stud for those situations where it doesn't flip all the way open or it doesn't convenience you to take it apart. The belt clip I worry about. It's only held in by one screw. They machine out like a little area. You can just see it there to try to prevent it from rocking back and forth and making the screw get loose. But they cut out the middle, and this thing is really pretty thin. It really is a pretty thin, pretty weak feeling belt loop. Even, my $5 Harbor Freight has a much stronger belt loop there. I should say belt hook. I do like the shape of this thumb stud. This is supposed to be some retro design, World War I, World War II era, so it has a little star on it. I will also say it doesn't have any serrations, which I actually like. I'm getting kind of tired of the serrations. And I should mention that the grind is extremely symmetrical. Actually, a lot of knives, they're not, especially this is a Taiwanese-made one, even though this is the Columbia River Knife and Tool Company, another Oregon knife company. Anybody who does a little bit of research on pocket knives and stuff realizes that a lot of knives come from Oregon for some reason. But this one does have a really symmetrical grind, although I thought it was a little bit cheap of them not to make the edge go all the way down. And somebody told me in the comments, I always forget, but there is like a little undercut area indicating that you would be able to sharpen the entire surface of the blade. They didn't actually do that. They kind of left that little triangle there, and I did want to point that out. The other issue is this kind of retro design. It doesn't have any bulging, so it's a real flat. It does have chamfers on the edges. This jimping or the grip surfaces are pretty good, although I would have appreciated them adding some to the actual blade to match the body. That's not a big deal. What is a big deal is this is a steel thumb wheel to help take it apart. And that's a real square edge. So if you're doing anything where you're trying to get through some real heavy-duty bulletproof packaging, you have this sharp wheel, and on a sharp corner, this really biting into the palm of your hand. It does, I guess they depend more for you to use your forefinger against that little the little finger switch just to help provide the forward thrust force, but I did want to point that out. So the whole deal with, and there is one last thing. But before I get into that, let's go ahead and break it down. It's supposedly pretty easy. You just take, and this thumb wheel is set up on a screw and is captured, and we can actually see it spinning around there, and there's a little collar in there, and you just unscrew the back of it. This only has 2 screws holding it together. There are no studs or anything like blade stop studs, and that's what I'll get into. So you just unscrew that until the back half comes apart, and then you just flip this switch in the front, and that's like a little cam action. And then, see, it doesn't really there it goes. It seems that you want to flip this switch first and then unscrew, because then the handle isn't. And here's the whole idea. It just comes apart. There's one half. This thing is captured in there. Here's our blade. And then here's our second half. And the only thing you have to worry about is trying not to lose the little washers. One thing I will say, and is being able to pull out the actual knife blade by itself real easily can, in many situations for many people, just being able to have the blade makes it much easier to resharpen, and that's why I thought it was so odd that they left that little edge down there. They do have, and I was incorrect, there is a stop. It's an internal stop. There's our internal peg, but it also relies a little bit on the back of the liner lock. I always forget these terms, you know. One thing I will mention is that is actually a pressed-in steel ball detent. It isn't just stamped in the liner, so I thought that was pretty neat. And on the other side of the handle, this is a steel insert. And it might be kind of hard to see how this works. Maybe on this side here. But it's pretty subtle, but there is a hex, like a bolt. And so what this has is it just has some teeth, and they go down on the flats, and then it just rotates a little bit just to catch under these different edges. And that's what I worry about the most, is not that it's not thick enough, but it's this area right here where either the edge of this will break off. This is a steel lever that they're using, but nonetheless, that is a weak point. You know, that, you gotta be careful picking up, is a fraction the thickness of even the knife blade that's attached to it, to give you an idea. And anyway, to reassemble it, and I'll kind of demonstrate what I worry about, is because a lot of these knife companies, and Columbia River Knife and Tool, or I call them kind of secret, this is a tight fit getting this blade down onto that peg, is they always boast. They just have all this boasting, and you know, it's like power tools or a lot of other products, used car sales type of things. You really have to press it together hard to get the switch to lock, but that's a good thing. There we go. And it works just fine. So they're big, you know, and they're advertising it's retro, and they actually even use the word, some pretty strong language, not cuss words, but almost, that it will take anything that you can throw at it, that'll just totally be super reliable. And of course, the way I showed how that mechanism locks in there, if you put a lot of sideways force, I'm sure that will bust. I mean, this is just a little bit too boastful. And for how much money they're charging for this thing, it's Ergonomics. That's why I say if you have a need for a knife that you can take apart like this quickly, otherwise, you know, for like 15 or 20 bucks, you can get this Kershaw 3850 Swerve. And, you know, it's a spring assist. It has a pretty nice blade on it. I should mention that this blade is indeed hollow ground. You can always tell hollow grind because you can just draw your fingers across it, and you'll feel that it likes to get a little bit thicker again right at the edge of the blade. But the blade on this Kershaw is quite a bit taller and just about as thick, and I think it has much better ergonomics and has a cross-bolted belt clip, so it's never going to come loose. 4 screws, you know, it's held together very well, has a very very thick liner. But as far as their boasting, you know, we'll handle anything you can throw at it. To kind of give you an idea, here's a Gerber that on if this is like $55, this is $70 on Amazon. This does not fold, but it gives you an idea. You know, you're getting an incredible sheath that can be mounted any different number of ways, even horizontally. And we have a pretty large blade. You can get an American-made knife for just $15 more. And this blade is 200 thousandths thick, so it's like 50% thicker than the blade on this. And this is something that you could split wood with. You could dig rocks out of the ground. You can hammer this into a tree and tie your hammock to it for $15 more. So really you got to decide if a quick takedown pocket knife is really what you want, or just spend a few more bucks and get something that's a lot more realistic, or buy two of these and still save money and get about the same amount of utilitarian use, and even in some situations it might be better. Kind of why I do these reviews, because a lot of times somebody might pick this up, think it's really cool the way you can take it apart and it's all retro, and you think it's pretty nice because, you know, I'm sure at a knife shop this would be $75. It would be pretty darn expensive, and they tell you all about how, actually surprisingly enough, all of these are Oregon knives. I don't know how it ended up that way, but this is a situation where as soon as you start doing research, you realize that the only real feature of this is the quick takedown, but it makes a variety of sacrifices for that, and the ergonomics aren't particularly great. No thumb studs. And so you gotta really decide what you're doing, because otherwise I could either go for something like this, which is something you could actually count on, or save a few bucks and you can get something that's just about the same quality, and arguably in many ways is even better. And, you know, you don't have to worry so much about, you know, a name or buying something for style, because these types of things are really for function. Anyway, sorry for the long video. I've done a few pocket knife reviews earlier, and I had some subscribers saying, try out some nicer ones. And, seeing this, I got it used for 20 bucks, and I'm perfectly happy with that. But if I had paid $50 or plus for this knife, I don't know how satisfied I'd really be, to tell you the truth. It seems neat, but it seems something that inevitably you're going to do something heavy duty with it, and it's just going to pop that stud out of this little lock lever, permanently ruining it. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody watching and subscribing. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. Until next time, Catus Maximus out.